The consciousness arrives before the body does. That is the first thing she registers: awareness before sensation, thought before breath, the strange clarity of a mind that has not yet needed a body to think with. She is aware of being aware. She is aware that this is unusual. In the 3 seconds before the room takes shape around her, she runs the last memory she has: the car park on Hewitt Street, the 2 men from the Kolev security detail who had been very professional about it, the specific quality of the silence after impact, and the thought, her final coherent thought, and embarrassing for it, that it was really quite careless of her to have been caught from behind by people she had profiled at an average 110 millisecond reaction time. She files it under prior experience. Not actionable. Then the body arrives, and everything gets very loud. Cold air. Stone walls. The smell of expensive herbs burned somewhere nearby, something that costs money and occupies a room in the way of objects placed by people who never think about what objects cost. A ceiling, high, plaster showing the ghost of a water stain at the northwest corner, where something was repaired but not repaired well. She is looking at the ceiling before she knows she is horizontal, and she is horizontal before she is confirmed she has limbs, which she now confirms by closing and opening the fingers of her right hand. 3 times. The fingers work. This is a better outcome than she had any right to expect. 17 years old. Female. A body that has been, until this morning, the property of Lady Novalisse Vane of House Vane, which she knows because she read 40 chapters of a web novel called Starfall Chronicle in the 20 minutes before the men from the Kolev security detail caught up with her. 40 chapters. The setup, the heroine's introduction, the early scheming of the villainess, and then the cliffhanger at the end of chapter 40, which she had never learned the resolution of. The villainess. She takes a slow breath. The body breathes easily, with the unthinking efficiency of good lungs and no current crises. She sits up. The room resolves around her with the patience of a room that has been here longer than its current occupant and will outlast her too. Large, not ostentatiously so, the kind of large that accumulates when the same family stays in the same place for generations without anyone thinking to divide it. West wall. A writing desk in dark wood, surface clear except for 3 sealed letters and a glass inkwell. North wall. A wardrobe with 1 door an inch ajar, which tells her the previous occupant was fastidious about large things and did not notice small ones, or was fastidious about nothing at all. East wall. 2 windows with glass old enough to have a slight ripple in it, the kind that comes from sand poured rough, and through the rippled glass a courtyard she can see but cannot read from here. She notes all of this before she moves. The letters first. She crosses to the writing desk and breaks the first seal. Lord Edwick, writing to Dearest Novalisse, referencing the matter we discussed at your last visit and asking whether she still intended to move forward before the enrollment period. Handwriting that performs confidence. She does not know what matter was discussed. She sets the letter down. The second, Lady Sephra, asking about the Loon household's pre-academy gathering. The phrase proper introductions carries an edge she can feel through the paper, but cannot fully interpret without knowing more about what relationship the old Nova maintained with Lady Sephra. The third is from someone who signs only M. It references a courier and a package, and the phrase per our arrangement with the specific flatness of someone who has learned not to put detail into writing. She reads it 3 times. She does not know what the arrangement is. She sets them all on the corner of the desk in the order she read them and turns to the social calendar pinned above it. 3 dinner events. 1 dress fitting. The academy entrance examination, underlined with increasing pressure. She can count 3 separate strokes in the ink, suggesting the original Nova had strong feelings about it that she cannot categorize as either eagerness or anxiety from the physical evidence alone. For months. She finds a clean sheet of paper, picks up the pen, and begins the only process that has ever actually settled her nervous system, the inventory. What she has. A body in better health than the one she left behind. 17 is younger than she has been in 10 years, and she can feel the difference in the steadiness of her hands and the absence of the tension that used to live between her shoulder blades. She has not yet tested its limits and will not until she knows what the limits need to be. 27 years of knowing how systems work. not just digital systems. All systems, the networked architecture of how institutions and people and power structures organize themselves, where the load-bearing assumptions are, what happens when you push at exactly the right angle. 40 chapters of partial information about a story she is now inside of. She knows there is a hero, Prince Aldous, second-born, described as exceptional and charming, a heroine, Cyril Loon, described as put upon and kind, and a villainess, herself, described as calculating and cruel. She knows the villainous schemes against the heroine and is eventually destroyed. She does not know the specific schemes. She does not know the timeline. She does not know who M is or what arrangement was being kept. For months until the Academy entrance examination. What she does not have. Any magic ability. The original Nova's inscription rank was described in the novel as minimal. She cannot assume otherwise. She will need to assess this before she can plan around it. Any allies she can trust. She does not yet know who these people are. Any knowledge of which of the old Nova schemes are already in motion. She folds the inventory and puts it in the inside pocket of the robe she is wearing, which is dark blue and more formally cut than any robe she ever owned. She ties the sash 3 attempts before she finds the right tension and goes to the window. The courtyard below is stone, recently swept but permanently gray with the kind of dust that settles in old estates regardless of cleaning. 3 servants cross it in the 4 minutes she watches, 2 carrying laden arms toward the kitchens, 1 empty-handed moving with the direction of someone who has a destination and means to reach it. She observes the route of the 3rd servant. She observes the light angle. She files both. Beyond the wall, the hills. Green in the particular way of a good growing season, heavy, saturated, the color of land that knows it is fertile. No city visible. The air has the quality of elevation and distance from other people. She turns from the window, goes to the wardrobe, and begins sorting through it. What a person keeps tells you what they are. The clothes are all in House Vane colors, onyx and copper, and they are all slightly more formal than the setting requires. Even here at home, on a private morning in her own room, the previous inhabitant dressed to be looked at. Someone who needed an audience and constructed one when none was present. She files this too. She selects the simplest dress available, which is still more complex than anything she owned in her previous life, and spends 4 minutes working out the fastening at the back, which requires a flexibility of the shoulder she develops a workaround for. Then she goes to find the library, because the first thing she actually needs is a general history of this world, and in a world where knowledge is physical, histories live in books. The library is on the ground floor of the East Wing. She finds it by a combination of process of elimination and the specific smell of old paper and cool air that accumulates in rooms where books are kept in quantity and read rather than arranged. It is a real library, 800 volumes at least, shelved with the slight disorder of a collection built by readers rather than decorators. Someone cared about these books in a way that had nothing to do with their appearance on a shelf. She notes this. She notes it carefully, because it is the first thing she has found in this house that feels like a person rather than a presentation. She pulls the most recent general history of Villainess and sits in the chair nearest the south window, where the afternoon light comes in clean and level, and reads. She reads for 3 hours. She does not take notes, because Hana Seo has always retained text at a rate that her employers considered an asset, and her therapist. She saw one for 11 months in her mid-20s. It did not take, considered a symptom. The 5 centuries of Villainess political history settle into her memory with the quiet efficiency of a system receiving well-organized input. House Vane. Eastern Territories. 300 years of political influence exercised through precision rather than force. A reputation for intelligence that is partly earned and partly a story the house has told about itself so consistently that the story has become indistinguishable from the record. The inscription tradition strongest in the Eastern families, the cipher notation school originating here before it was reclassified as archaic by the Academy's founding curriculum. Cipher notation. The novel had not mentioned this. She sets the history book aside and looks for something more specific. By the time the cook, she has learned the cook's name is Ren, from a brief encounter in the kitchen corridor, sends a girl to say dinner will be ready in half an hour. She has read 3 texts and knows enough about the formal structure of this world to begin placing the pieces she has into context. She goes to dinner. She eats alone at the long table, in the seat second from the near end. Not the head. She thinks, I have been here one day. I know the floor plan and 3 staff members by face. I know the old Nova was running something I cannot identify yet. I know there are active relationships that will expect things from me. I know I am supposed to die. She finishes her soup. She sets the bowl aside and begins composing, in her head, the first steps of what is too early to call a plan and is currently just a list of questions she needs answers to before she can plan anything. The inscription system. First, she cannot do anything useful until she knows what she can actually do. She will start there. She blows out her lamp that night and lies in the dark and thinks, 4 months. No magic. No allies. 40 chapters of a web novel and a reputation she did not build. She has had worse odds. She cannot immediately remember when. But she is certain she has, and it does not occur to her to be frightened tonight, only to be working, and so she is, in the dark, going over what she knows and what she does not know and the distance between the two, until she falls asleep. For 3 days she does not perform. This is the core of the strategy, such as it is, in the absence of knowing what the old Nova's specific behaviors were, the only defensible position is to do as little as possible while taking in as much as possible. She does not initiate social interactions beyond what politeness requires. She does not respond to the 3 letters. She moves through the manor on a daily circuit calibrated to appear aimless, the way a girl who has returned from somewhere gradually remembers how a house works. In practice, it is a systematic reconnaissance. By the end of the first day, she has the floor plan, the staff schedule, and the 3 social fault lines that exist in the substrata of any household where people live in close proximity and pretend not to notice things about each other. She has also begun categorizing the staff by what their behavior toward her communicates about what they knew of the old Nova's behavior toward them. The head cook Ren she places in the category, loyal to the house, complicated feelings about the air. Ren is warm with her in a way that is practiced enough to be involuntary, but carries a specific watchfulness around the edges, the watchfulness of someone who has seen something she did not like and has not decided whether to expect it again. Nova notes this and does not push. The stable master, a man named Dov who she has now seen twice, but not spoken to, she places in a different category entirely. He moves through the estate with the peripheral awareness of someone who has lived in close quarters with institutional power for long enough to have learned precisely how much space to take up. He was hired by someone she does not yet have a clear picture of. She marks him as a future data source and moves on. The chambermaid assigned to her wing is 15, her name is Finn, and she watches Nova with the specific quality of attention that children develop when they have learned that noticing the wrong thing at the wrong moment carries costs. Nova catches this in the 2nd hour of the first day, catches herself catching it, and makes a decision. She will not use Fun. Not as a source, not as anything. Some things are not worth it even when they would be efficient. She has not had many principles in her life. She is accumulating them slowly, like someone building a wall out of whatever materials are on hand. Vane she sees twice in 3 days. The first time, through the library's east window on the morning of the 2nd day. He crosses the courtyard with 2 men she does not recognize, colleagues or advisors, their body language suggesting the latter, the specific half-step behind that people adopt when accompanying someone whose decisions matter. He is tall in the way that is his natural state rather than a posture choice. His hair is dark and going silver at the temples, and his face has the controlled economy of someone who has been making difficult decisions for long enough that he has stopped telegraphing which ones are difficult. He does not look up at the library window. He does not stop for anyone. He passes through the courtyard in 45 seconds and is gone. She has memorized the cut of the jacket, the set of his shoulders, and the specific quality of stillness that lives in a person who does not fidget. She notes that he did not come to her room on the morning she arrived. She notes that it has now been 2 days and he still is not. She files this under. The relationship between the old Nova and her father was something that caused him to keep his distance. She needs to know more before she can decide what to do with this. The 2nd time, from the upper corridor, looking down through the decorative railing at a meeting in the formal receiving room below. His back is to her. The visitor is a man of middle years she does not recognize, and the conversation lasts approximately 4 minutes, and she cannot hear the words from this angle with the stone of the corridor floor between her and them. When the visitor leaves, Rian stands in the empty receiving room for a moment with his hands at his sides, looking at nothing in particular, with the expression of someone who has just been told something they had been expecting and had been hoping would not arrive. Then he goes back toward his study, and she goes back to the library. Theo she finds on the first afternoon, which she had predicted from the staff schedule. The schoolroom is in the east corridor and runs from mid-morning until the 3rd hour of the afternoon. And she had reasoned that a 14-year-old boy with a complicated relationship with his older sister would find a reason to be in the east corridor when the older sister was likely to pass through it. He is standing in the corridor when she rounds the corner, positioned with the specific naturalness of someone who has arranged to be there. He is tall for 14, but still in the proportion adjustment phase, all limbs and the suggestion of the shape he will eventually grow into. He has his mother's coloring according to the staff's offhand comments, fairer than Nova, the typical Vane pallor. He looks at her with the flat attention of someone who has had time to prepare. She says, "Hello." He says, "You're back," not as a greeting, after a pause that is exactly long enough to communicate that the pause was deliberate. She says, "I'm back." He looks at her for one more second. Then he turns and goes into the schoolroom and closes the door. The click of the latch is not loud. She continues down the corridor. She does not stop walking, and she does not look back, and she files this interaction under accurate, not yet useful. The old Nova's room has layers, like all rooms where someone has lived long enough to need places for the things they do not want found. The surface layer is what anyone would see, clean, arranged, house Vane colors throughout, the writing desk cleared except for the letters she has already opened. The second layer is in the administrative filing in the desk's lower left drawer, which she finds on the afternoon of the first day and spends the next 2 days reading systematically. The old Nova's correspondence from the previous year, sorted by correspondent, with 3 separate shorthand systems that she unpacks in under an hour because they are not constructed to resist serious scrutiny. They are the encoding of someone who wanted to obscure meaning from casual eyes, not from anyone actually trying. What she builds from the correspondence, a map. 7 people in active regular contact with the old Nova, all of them from families whose names she has now placed in the history of Valen's social landscape. 12 people in a peripheral sphere who receive occasional communications and are expected to relay rather than originate. And 1 person who signs only M and whose correspondence exists in its own folder at the back of the drawer, away from everything else, and whose letters reference events she cannot yet place. She does not know who M is. She does not know what the arrangement involves. She marks both as priority unknowns and continues. The third layer she finds on the second day, behind the wardrobe's back panel, which is not quite flush in the way of something moved repeatedly and reset without full care. What is behind it? A slim leather folder. Inside it, correspondence drafts, never sent, and a plan. The plan is detailed. It targets a girl named Sierra Loon, described across the documents as the scholarship type, and Loon's second daughter, no real political weight. And it is calibrated with a precision that she recognizes because she has constructed campaigns structurally identical to this. Identify the target's social dependencies, the people and positions they rely on for standing. Apply pressure to the dependencies before approaching the target. Maintain separation from the mechanism while remaining the control point. A classic isolation operation, and whoever designed the framework understood exactly what they were doing. She sits on the floor with the folder in her lap. She has run things like this. Not against girls at schools. Against corporate competitors, against journalists whose investigations were inconvenient, against a pharmaceutical researcher whose work had unfortunate implications for a client's market position. She told herself it was not the same thing. She knew it was structurally the same thing and chose not to look at the difference directly. She was very good at not looking at things directly. It had been, professionally, one of her strengths. She closes the folder. 3 more minutes on the floor. Then she gets up, because sitting does not change what she is going to do, and she has already decided what she is going to do. She goes to the writing desk, removes the false bottom of the top right drawer. It takes her 7 minutes to find it, because she has not lived in this body long enough to know where the old Nova kept the things she was most careful about, and takes out a small sealed envelope that she assumes contains something significant. It contains a key. She does not know what it opens. She puts it in her inventory pocket. On the evening of the third day, she sits at the writing desk with a lamp and the folder from behind the wardrobe panel. She reads everything in it one more time, carefully, the way she used to read the operational parameters of a job before deciding whether to take it. Then she burns it in the lamp, sheet by sheet, and watches the paper blacken and curl and go to ash. The campaign will not happen. That is not a decision she arrived at through moral reasoning or a genuine change of character. It is a decision she is making because she is trying to survive inside a story where the villainess schemes against the heroine and is eventually destroyed, and the most reliable way to not be destroyed is to stop being the villainess. And the most efficient first step toward that is to cancel the specific schemes that are in motion. That is the logic she uses. She acknowledges, somewhere below the logic, that watching the folder burn does not feel like nothing. She does not examine this acknowledgement closely. She takes a fresh sheet of paper and begins composing replies to the 7 active correspondents. She writes each one in the social register of someone who is engaged but non-committal, confirming nothing, canceling nothing, and giving no one a reason to either escalate or formally withdraw. The correspondents will receive these letters and recalibrate slightly and wait, and in the meantime, she will have bought herself time to understand what she is actually dealing with before she has to do anything decisive about it. She does not write to M. She addresses the 7 envelopes, blows out the lamp, and goes to bed in the dark with the key from the false drawer bottom and the letters she wrote sitting on the desk, waiting for the morning post. She lies in the dark and thinks about what she read in the history texts. The cipher notation school, classified as archaic 60 years before the founding of the Royal Academy, originating in the Eastern families. The Vane family among them. She thinks, there is something in this room that the old Nova lived in for 17 years and did not know was there. She does not yet know what it is. She will find it. She falls asleep going over the staff schedule and the floor plan and the map of social relationships and the key she does not yet have a lock for, which is the most honest version of the feeling of having arrived somewhere new with too many questions and not enough time, and the conviction that what you do with the first week matters more than anything that comes after. Instructor Mavitt arrives on the 7th morning, which is earlier than she expected and precisely the sort of information that resets a timeline. She is in the library when Finn comes to tell her. The girl knocks with 2 knuckles, which is already a change from the first day when she had knocked with 4 and waited with the posture of someone prepared to be scolded. Nova has been careful about Finn without making the care visible. It is, she has decided, the only kind of care that actually counts in a household where the previous owner made everyone around her perform caution. She closes the history text she has been reading, a volume on the Vailden inscription tradition's founding period, borrowed from the shelf beside the window, and marks the page with the letter she was going to answer this morning, which can wait. Then she sets the book on the desk where Finn will see it when she enters, because it does not hurt to be seen reading. Your instructor has arrived, Finn says, from the doorway. He's in the morning room. I'll be right there, Nova says, and she means it in a way that also means, I am going to spend 60 seconds doing nothing except standing in the center of this library and deciding how to walk into that room. She spends the 60 seconds. What she has managed to learn about Instructor Mavitt in 7 days. He has been in the Vane household for 3 years, assigned at the recommendation of Grand Archivist Vethan Crane, who is her godfather and a man she has not yet met but who appears in enough of the old Nova's correspondence to occupy significant real estate in her understanding of this household's social architecture. Mavitt is paid well. He does not eat his meals with the staff. His room is in the East Wing guest corridor, not the servants' quarters. These are distinctions that tell her something about how he has been categorized and, by extension, how he has understood himself here. She has also noted, from the correspondence, the old Nova referred to Mavitt exclusively as instructor in her written communications, never by name alone. which is the courtesy you extend to someone you have been told to respect and do not personally like. She walks into the morning room. He is standing at the window. He turns when she enters, and the first thing she registers is the quality of the movement. It is fluid, controlled, the precise pivot of a man who is aware of where his body is in space at all times. He is approximately 45, brown-haired going thin at the crown, with the kind of face that is pleasant without being memorable. The pleasantness is the part she is most interested in, because pleasant faces on people in positions of influence are professional tools as often as they are genuine expressions. He says, "Lady Novalisse, it's good to have you back." He says this warmly. She notes the warmth in the way she used to note warmth in people she was assessing for jobs, as data. Warmth costs nothing and tells you almost nothing on its own. What tells you something is what the warmth does and does not accompany. She says, "Thank you, instructor. I've been looking forward to resuming the lessons." This is not true. She has been looking forward to this meeting in the way she used to look forward to the first meeting with a new target. It is the most information-rich moment, and it tells you things the subsequent meetings don't. She sits in the chair he has placed opposite the lesson table, which is the chair for a student, and he sits at the lesson table itself, which is the chair for a teacher. And she watches him arrange his materials with the economy of someone who has done this many times. He says, "I thought we might continue from where we left off before the summer. The Thornfield sequence, you were making excellent progress." She says, "I was hoping we might try something different, actually." A pause. Half a second. He says, "Of course. What did you have in mind?" She says, "I'd like to work through the foundational texts, the primary volumes. I've been looking through the library here and I found some of the basic theory texts, and I realized I'm not sure I fully understand the underlying logic of why the notation system works the way it does." Mavitt looks at her for a moment. It is a brief look, barely a second, and to anyone else in this room it would read as a teacher calibrating a response to an unexpected question. She is not looking at what it reads as. She is looking at what it is. What it is a pause that he spent about 30% of its duration deciding what to do and the remaining 70 executing the decision. He says, "The primary texts are wonderful, but perhaps a bit dry for our purposes. The Thornfield sequence is much better calibrated for someone at your level, more practical, more immediately applicable." She says, "I'd find it helpful to understand the theory first. Would it be possible to have access to the primary volumes? I know they're in the Academy Library, but I thought there might be copies here." He says, "I'm sure we can arrange something. Let me see what I have." He opens his satchel and removes a stack of folders, prepared lesson materials. She can tell from the organization of them, and sets them on the table. "In the meantime, let's look at what we were working on." She looks at the materials he has placed on the table. She can read the notation on the top page from where she sits. It is a Thornfield series inscription, which she has not yet encountered in the primary texts she has been working through in the library, but which she can already see, from the notation structure, is a technique, not a theory. A thing that does something, not an explanation of why or how. She has been building a picture from the library texts of what inscription notation is in terms of its underlying logic, what the symbols mean in the abstract, how they combine, what the grammar of the system is. And the material in front of her is the equivalent of being handed a set of keyboard shortcuts without being told what the operating system does. She says, "Of course," and picks up the first page. The lesson lasts 2 hours. She performs at the level she has assessed the original Nova would have occupied, competent in the specific techniques she has been practicing under Mavitt's curriculum. Less confident in anything that involves understanding the framework the techniques are built on. She makes 1 or 2 small errors that are the errors of someone who has learned a method, but not the reasoning behind it. Mavitt corrects them gently. He is a good teacher, technically. The corrections are precise and the explanations are clear, and if she were actually a 17-year-old girl who had spent 3 years under this curriculum, she would probably be improving. She watches him teach and thinks, he is curating something. It is not the absence of information that makes her certain a lot of good teachers specialize and do not cover everything. It is the shape of the absences. What he does not explain when she asks a question that edges toward the theoretical. The way his answers redirect her attention back to the specific technique, the specific application, the specific what without the specific why. The way he praises her most warmly when she produces the expected output and says nothing at all when she asks questions he does not directly answer. She files this. At the end of the lesson he says, "Very good work today. You've retained the summer sequence well." She has not retained the summer sequence. She derived it over 3 days from the underlying notation logic she found in the primary texts, which is a different thing, and she is careful not to demonstrate this in any way he could notice. She says, "Thank you, instructor. I really would like those foundational texts if it's possible. I think I'd sleep better understanding why the notation does what it does, rather than just knowing that it does." He smiles. It is a real smile, the kind that reaches the edges of the eyes. He says, "I'll see what I can find." She smiles back and says nothing else. That evening she sits in the library after dinner with the primary theory text she borrowed from the shelf in the corner, the one she found on day 3. On the second shelf from the bottom behind a more recent inscription history that had been placed in front of it, which is the sort of hiding in plain sight that a library accumulates when the person who cared about a particular subject no longer lives in the house and no one has thought to rearrange the books. The text is 60 years old. It is from the period before the Academy's founding curriculum was formalized. It covers the inscription notation system from the beginning, not from the beginning of the technique, but from the beginning of the logic, why the symbols represent what they represent, how the notation grammar emerged from the underlying theory of how mana crystallizes when expelled through intent-directed contact with a surface. She reads for 2 hours. Then she sets the book down and sits with her hands in her lap and thinks very carefully about the shape of the gap between this text and everything Mavet has taught her today. In the primary text, the notation system is described as having been derived from a set of 12 foundational logical operations. 7 of those operations are in common use in the modern curriculum. The other 5 are classified in the text as higher-order conditional operations, more complex, requiring more precision, but part of the foundational grammar. In Mavet's prepared lesson materials, she went back to look at them after the lesson. She had catalogued the page numbers. 5 of the 12 foundational operations do not appear. Not even by reference. Not even as historical context. The same 5. She sits with this for a while. Then she picks up the book again and reads until the lamp oil runs low, and she is very careful to return it to exactly the spot behind the other text where she found it. She finds him by following the logic of where a 14-year-old boy goes when he wants to practice something he has not been told he should be practicing. The inscription garden is on the south side of the manor, sheltered from the wind by the east wing's outer wall, which means it gets better light in the morning than any other outdoor space, and also means that most of the household's traffic routes around rather than through it. There are 6 stone practice tablets set in a rough semicircle around a central fountain that has not run water in at least a decade. The basin is dry and has been used as a planter for something that has since died. The tablets are the standard Academy format, large enough to write a full rank 2 inscription array on without overcrowding. She can see from the entrance archway that he is working on the 3rd tablet from the left. She watches from the archway for approximately 4 minutes without his noticing her, which tells her 2 things. He is focused enough on the notation to have narrowed his environmental awareness, and he has not yet learned to keep peripheral tracking active while working, which is the kind of thing you learn when you have been doing dangerous work for long enough to understand that focus and attention are not the same resource. He is writing a rank 2 compound sequence. She can see this from the shape of his cipher ink on the stone gray-white, the natural color of mana before a mage develops a characteristic tint, which means he is new enough to inscription work that his mana has not yet settled into a specific expression. The compound sequence he is attempting involves a light inscription followed by a temperature inscription, intended to work together as a compound environmental effect. It is a good choice for practice. Actually, the 2 systems interact in a way that requires the mage to understand sequencing rather than just execution. But his second instruction is written before the first instruction has fully resolved, which means the 2 are running simultaneously rather than in sequence, which means they are fighting each other's mana signature rather than building on it. The light inscription is flickering. The temperature effect is weak and directional in a way it should not be. He writes the 3rd instruction, which is intended to link the 2, and the whole thing destabilizes and goes dark. He stares at the dead inscription for a moment. Then he begins again. She watches him go through it twice more before she steps through the archway. He registers her immediately. The set of his shoulders changes, shoulders going back, chin up, the instinctive assembly of a posture that says I was not doing anything that required concealment, and I am not surprised to see you. She sees the posture and recognizes what it is and does not point this out. She walks to the second practice tablet and reads the surface. Practice marks from several weeks ago, not recently worked, dried into the stone. She says, without looking at him, your second instruction is fighting your first. He does not answer immediately. She can feel the specific quality of his silence, not absence, the opposite of absence. The silence of someone deciding whether to engage with something said by a person they are not sure they trust. She says, the sequence needs a pause notation between them. A buffer that lets the first resolve before the second picks up the load. She turns and looks at him then. He is watching her with his father's particular controlled expression, but he is 14 and does not yet have 20 years of practice with it, so there is more visible underneath, the wariness, and beneath the wariness. Something that has not decided yet what it wants to be. She does not wait for him to respond. She takes the piece of practice paper from the edge of the tablet. There is always a stack of it at inscription gardens, rough paper for notation drafts, and writes the pause notation. It is a simple thing, 3 symbols in a specific configuration that she derived this week from the foundational text, and she is not sure if he will be able to read it because she does not know what curriculum he has been given. But she writes it the way it is actually meant to look, from the foundational logic, not the simplified version in the approved texts. She sets the paper on the wall that borders the garden. Then she goes back toward the manor entrance. She does not look at him again. She does not explain what she wrote or why she is leaving or what she expects from him in return. She does not explain anything. This is the choice she makes to give something with no visible string attached, and the choice is not entirely comfortable, because the part of her that is still Hana Seo is aware that strings are how you maintain leverage, and leverage is how you maintain position. Giving without leverage is not a strategy. It is something else that she does not have a precise name for yet, operating on the understanding that she is trying to build something different than what she has built before, and that it will not look like anything she recognizes at the start. She goes inside. In the evening she reads for 2 hours and then sits at the writing desk and composes a careful letter to Lady Sephra about the pre-academy gathering, accepting, in language that commits to nothing beyond presence. She has decided she needs to attend it. She does not know enough about the social landscape yet to understand what the old Nova's absence would signal or what her presence will signal, and the only way to calibrate that is to be present. She is on the second draft of this letter when she becomes aware that she keeps coming back to the piece of paper she left on the garden wall. She sets down the pen. She does not know why she helped him with the notation. It is not strategic. He is her brother by circumstance, not by any relationship they have built, and she does not yet know what the relationship between them could be or whether he will allow it to become anything. She does not know if he will even read the paper or if he will leave it on the wall and pointedly not look at it. She knows that the original Nova did not help him. She knows this from the quality of his silence and the practiced way he assembled his posture when he heard her come through the archway. The posture of a boy who has learned to perform indifference to his older sister's attention and has had enough practice at it that the performance is automatic. The old Nova had a 14-year-old brother with an inscription talent he was practicing in secret, and she had not once, in all the evidence Nova has been able to assemble from the correspondence and the household's ambient record, done anything with this knowledge except ignore it. She picks up the pen again and finishes the letter to Lady Sephra. She thinks, I am making choices because I have decided to make them, not because I understand why I'm making them. This is a category of experience she is not very familiar with. In her previous life, every action was rooted in a clear reason, money, position, the specific logic of a job. This is not that. This is something she does not have a good label for. She seals the letter and puts it with the outgoing correspondence. She goes to bed. She dreams once, in the night, not the kind of dream she can catch hold of, just the impression of a room she does not recognize, a desk covered in paper, and the smell of ink that is not quite the same as the ink in the Manor's inkwells. She wakes at the second hour of the morning and lies in the dark with the impression fading and does not go back to sleep immediately. She lies there and thinks about the pause notation she wrote on the practice paper. 3 symbols. From the foundational text that should be in every beginner's curriculum and is not, as far as she can tell, in the curriculum Mavet has been running. She derived it herself from the underlying logic of how the notation grammar works, because she read the original text and understood not just the what but the why. She thinks Mavet's prepared materials are missing 5 of the 12 foundational operations. She thinks whoever designed those materials knew what they were leaving out. She thinks the pause notation is one of the things that is missing. She turns this over for a long time. The boy in the garden is trying to learn something that he does not have the full tools for, because the full tools are not in the curriculum he has access to. He is doing this on his own time, in the garden, before anyone else is awake, with a determination that she recognizes from the outside as the same quality she had at 16 when she was teaching herself to code from library books and online forums, because the school's computer class was 2 years behind where she needed to be. She thinks he has a talent, and he is trying to develop it with incomplete information. She thinks that is exactly what she is doing. She turns over in the bed and looks at the ceiling in the dark and thinks about the shape of things that are incomplete and the specific difference between things that are incomplete by accident and things that are incomplete on purpose. In the morning, she will go back to the primary texts. There is something in those 5 missing operations that she has not fully worked out yet, and she needs to work it out before she meets with Mavet again. On the 12th day, she finds the false compartment in the writing desk. She has been looking for it. Not because she suspected it was there. She did not, but because the old Nova was the kind of person who needed a layer below the layer behind the wardrobe, and the writing desk was the one piece of furniture she had not yet fully mapped. She runs her hands along the underside on a Wednesday afternoon when the household is quiet and Mavet has gone to the village on an errand she did not ask about and did not need to know the reason for. The compartment is in the lower right, accessible by pressing a specific configuration of carved decorative elements in the desk side panel in a sequence she works out in approximately 9 minutes, because the sequence is not arbitrary. It is based on a notation pattern from the Thornfield series, which means the original Nova designed it herself, or had it designed, sometime after she began inscription lessons. The compartment is shallow. Inside it, a packet of letters, folded and sealed with a private mark she has not encountered before, and a collection of loose pages covered in fine, dense handwriting. She reads the loose pages first. They are a detailed plan. Not a social plan. Not the isolation campaign she found behind the wardrobe. Something more specific and more operational. It is a campaign against a girl named Sierra Loon, focused specifically on the academy, beginning with the enrollment period and running through the first year. The loose pages include a list of social dependencies to pressure, a list of specific individuals to recruit as instruments, a series of events to arrange the appearance of. It is detailed in the way that Hana Seo's most polished work had been detailed, nothing left to chance, every contingency noted, the logic of causation planned 2 steps ahead of execution. She reads it through once without stopping. Then she goes back and reads it a second time more slowly, because the first read is for information and the second read is for something else, for the shape of the mind that wrote it. How it thinks. What it values. What it considers an acceptable cost. The third thing she reads it for is whether there is anything already in motion that she cannot stop by simply choosing not to execute the plan herself. There is. 3 items on the list have a notation beside them, a small mark, a check, which she interprets as already arranged. She does not know what already arranged means for each item specifically. She does not know who arranged them or when. She reads the descriptions of the 3 items and tries to work out, from the description alone, what already arranged would look like in practice, what she would need to find and undo before the item executed itself. Item 1. A social connection, a mutual friend instructed to make a particular introduction. This one she can probably defuse by making the introduction herself in a different key. She meets Sierra first, on her own terms, before the arranged introduction can happen. Item 2. Correspondence. A letter, apparently already sent, to someone named Edwick, Lord Edwick, her correspondent, containing specific language about Sira. She does not know what the letter says. She does not know if she can recall it. Item 3. An arrangement with someone in the pre-academy gathering circuit to do something that is described only as ensure the seating. She does not know what ensure the seating means and cannot decode it from context. She sits with the 3 items for a long time. Then she reads the sealed letters. The sealed letters are to M. Or rather, they are drafts of letters that were going to go to M but are not yet sent, which means they are the outgoing half of the correspondence she has already read, and which gives her, finally, a picture of what the arrangement with M actually is. M is paying for something. Specifically, M has been paying for the social campaign against Sira Loon through an intermediary financial arrangement that routes the money through a guild trading house in a way designed to be untraceable. M wants Sira Loon isolated and discredited before the academy enrollment period begins. The letters are careful about not saying why M wants this, which tells her that the old Nova did not know why either, or knew and was careful not to put it in writing. She sits with this for a considerably longer time. Someone external to this household was paying the old Nova to run a campaign against a 17-year-old girl who is, as far as Nova can tell from the novel, not a strategic threat to anyone. Sira Loon is the second daughter of House Loon. She is going to the academy on merit. She is, in the novel, described as kind and well-liked and the person the hero falls in love with, which is the structural opposite of a strategic threat. Which means M's reason is not strategic, or the strategy is not about Sira herself, or this world is more complicated than 40 chapters of a web novel about a prince and his love interest suggested, which is the most likely of the 3 possibilities and the one that wakes up the particular part of her brain that has always found complexity more interesting than troubling. She puts the letters back in the compartment. She closes the panel. She stands up from the desk and goes to the window. Outside, the hills. The light has shifted to the particular gold of late afternoon, the kind that makes everything look cleaner than it is. A bird she doesn't know the name of is doing something methodical in the dry fountain basin in the garden below. She has a plan in motion that she did not put in motion, targeting a person she has not met, funded by someone she cannot identify, for reasons she does not know. She does not know how to undo all of it. She knows she can undo some of it. She goes to the writing desk, opens the compartment, takes out the pile of pages and the draft letters, and carries them to the writing desk lamp, which is lit against the afternoon dimness. She burns the pages sheet by sheet, watching each one blacken and curl. It takes 12 minutes. The smoke is a thin gray curl that dissipates before it reaches the ceiling. Then she sits down with a fresh sheet of paper and begins composing a letter to Lord Edwick. The letter she writes is not threatening. It is pleasant, social, and entirely clear. She is looking forward to meeting Lady Sira Loon at the pre-academy gathering and hopes they will have an opportunity to make a proper introduction. She mentions Sira by name in a way that is complimentary. She does not reference any prior communications. She writes as though the previous letter never happened. Edwick will receive this and understand something has changed. She does not know yet what he will do with that understanding, but she is betting on him choosing to follow the new direction rather than the old one, because people in peripheral network positions generally prefer the path of least friction. And following a clear signal from the principal is the path of least friction. She does not know how to handle M. She does not write to M. She writes a second letter to the pre-academy gatherings host, a lady foreign, whose name appears in the social calendar, asking casually whether she might have any input on the seating arrangement, as she has some thoughts about who might enjoy being adjacent to whom. The response to this letter, when it comes, will tell her whether the seating arrangement is still fluid or has already been fixed in the specific way the plan described. She seals both letters. She looks at the pile of ash in the lamp's catch basin. She thinks Hana Seo would note that she has just burned leverage. She has erased evidence of a financial arrangement and a detailed operational plan that she could have used as currency with whoever wants to destroy Sira Loon, and instead of using it, she burned it. That is not a strategic move. That is not a professional move. That is the move of someone who has decided that the currency she is done trading in is this particular kind. She thinks, fine. She opens the desk's ordinary top drawer and takes out a clean sheet of paper and begins composing the correspondence that will close out the active pieces of the old Nova social network. The letters that say nothing specific and commit to nothing and give no one a reason to escalate. She writes 7 of them, each one slightly different in register to match what she has been able to infer about each relationship. She writes them with the care of someone doing precise work under constraint. When she is done, it is fully dark outside and the lamp is burning low. She has 9 letters sealed on the edge of the desk. She blows out the lamp and sits in the dark for a moment. She thinks, I have no idea if any of this will work. She thinks, I have never in my life done something without knowing whether it would work. It is a very strange feeling. She gets up and goes to bed and sleeps better than she has since she arrived. The foundational texts take her 2 days to fully parse, and on the 3rd day something clicks. She is sitting at the library table with the oldest text she has found, the pre-academy volume, 60 years old, smelling of whatever they treated the bindings within that period, which is something between cedar and iron. And she is working through the 3rd chapter on the foundational logical operations for the 4th time, because the 4th time is where comprehension usually finishes what the first 3 readings began. She has the notation system's 12 foundational operations written out in her own hand on a piece of practice paper beside the book, and she is tracing the logic of how each symbol set connects to the operational grammar beneath it. The click happens in the middle of the 6th operation. It is not dramatic. It is the specific sensation she had at 16 when she was working through a programming tutorial on her phone on the subway, and the concept of recursion resolved from something she could repeat back accurately to something she actually understood. And she sat up a little straighter on the plastic bench, because the world had just become slightly larger. She has had this sensation perhaps 30 times in her life. Every time it has been about something structural, an underlying logic, she suddenly has access to rather than just a description of. Inscription notation is a programming language. Not metaphorically. Not approximately. It is a formal language with a grammar and a logic and a specific relationship between syntax and execution, and the 12 foundational operations are the 12 primitive operations from which all higher functions are composed. And the reason the modern curriculum starts with prepared techniques rather than the foundational logic is the same reason programming courses often start with pre-written functions rather than teaching you what a bit is. It is faster. And it is fine for most purposes. And it completely obscures the underlying architecture from the people who would most benefit from understanding it. She sets down her pen and sits with this for approximately 4 minutes. Then she picks up the pen and begins writing. She does not write an inscription. She writes analysis, the kind of notation she would have used in her previous life to map a system structure before looking for its vulnerabilities. She writes the 12 foundational operations in a column on the left side of the page. In the center, she writes the conditional relationships between them, how each operation combines with the others, what the grammar allows and what it prohibits. On the right side, she writes, for each operation, what the approved curriculum's simplified version of it looks like versus the full version as described in the foundational text. The simplified versions are not wrong. They are reduced. Specifically, they are reduced in ways that remove the conditional complexity, the operations that allow for exception handling, for branching logic, for the kind of self-referential structure that allows an inscription to respond to its own state. The modern curriculum's techniques are clean and efficient in the way of a machine optimized for a single function. They do not leave room for anything outside the expected parameters. She thinks about this. She thinks about the specific 5 operations that are missing from Mavit's curriculum, the pause notation she derived for Theo, and 4 others she has identified since. The missing 5 are not the simple operations. They are the ones that require the mage to think about the inscription as a system rather than a technique, the ones that introduce conditionality, self-reference, exception handling. The operations that allow an inscription to do something its writer did not specifically anticipate. She writes, at the bottom of the analysis page, why these 5? Selection criteria? She looks at this for a while. A curriculum missing 5 operations is not automatically suspicious. Curricula simplify things all the time. You cannot teach everything at once, and the decision of what to teach first and what to save for later is not inherently ideological. but a curriculum that consistently removes the operations that allow for system-level thinking, while retaining all the operations that produce technique-level outputs, is a curriculum that is producing a specific kind of mage. A mage who can execute approved techniques fluently and cannot derive anything outside them. She writes, "Is this intentional?" She sits with the question. She does not have enough information yet. She knows. The modern curriculum is missing foundational elements. She knows. Mavit's prepared materials are constructed to guide her towards specific techniques while feeling like comprehensive instruction. She knows. The pre-academy text she found in the library exists, which means someone put it on the shelf, which means at some point this information was available in this house. She does not know who put it on the shelf. She does not know if the old Nova ever read it. She does not know if its presence in the library is deliberate or the remnant of a historical collection that nobody thought to curate. She folds the analysis page, puts it in the inside pocket of her dress, and goes back to the text. Over the next week, she reads all 4 primary texts she has found in the library. The oldest is the pre-academy volume. The next oldest is from approximately 30 years before the Academy's founding, a theoretical text on the inscription notation system's historical development that traces the notation grammar back to its origins in the Eastern families. The third is a practitioner's manual from the Academy's early period, before the curriculum was formalized, which shows a very different structure from what Mavit has been teaching. Considerably more emphasis on the foundational operations and considerably less on specific technique sequences. The fourth is the most recent, a history of inscription tradition published 15 years ago, after the Academy's current curriculum was established, which describes the earlier approaches as valuable historical context that has been superseded by more practical frameworks. She reads the word superseded and makes a note of it in her private notation, not the standard inscription notation, which anyone in this household could read, but a cipher she has constructed from the foundational notation grammar itself, treating it as an encoding system rather than a writing system. The cipher is not beautiful. It is functional. It gets the information stored in a form that requires specific knowledge to decode. She writes, superseded means replaced, not improved. Why is a more complex system less practical? And then, below that, because the people deciding what counts as practical had a specific reason to prefer the simpler system. She does not know yet who those people are. She knows they exist because a system does not simplify itself. On the 18th day, she produces her first independent inscription. Not from the textbook. Not from Mavit's prepared curriculum. From her own derivation of what the foundational logic implies a simple light inscription should look like, written in the full notation that includes all 12 foundational operations rather than the reduced version in the approved curriculum. She does it alone, late at night, at the desk in her room with the lamp turned low so that the cipher ink, whatever color it will eventually be, it hasn't settled yet, will be visible against the relative dark. She has the practice paper in front of her. She has her analysis notes beside it. She writes the inscription carefully, following her derivation, checking each symbol against the foundational text's grammar guide. The inscription activates. A soft light appears above the desk, the kind that a standard light inscription produces. She knows this much. She watches it. Then something happens that should not happen, based on the standard light inscription's behavior as described in the curriculum text. The light adjusts. Not dramatically, not in a way that would be visible to anyone not watching for it. The ambient lamp is low, and the inscription's light increases fractionally to compensate. She watches this happen. She watches it again as she moves the lamp's wick up, and the inscription dims slightly, down, and it brightens. She has produced a self-adjusting inscription on her first attempt. She sits very still. The standard light inscription in the approved curriculum does not self-adjust. It produces a fixed output based on the mana input at the time of writing and sustains that output until the mana is exhausted. The self-adjustment she has produced is a behavior that emerges from the conditional logic she included in her version. The pause notation and the exception handling structure she derived from the 2 foundational operations that are missing from the approved curriculum. She did not plan this specific behavior. She built a logically complete system, and the behavior emerged from the system's logic doing what logically complete systems do, handling the cases you did not anticipate. She looks at the light. She looks at the notation she wrote that produced it. She thinks, the approved version cannot do this. Not because the mana physics prohibits it. Because the approved version does not have the operations that allow the inscription to respond to its own environment. She thinks, that is not an accident. She dismisses the inscription with a touch, and the light goes out, and she sits in the dark for a while thinking about what it means that the world's primary magical education system is teaching everyone to write code without the operations that make a program intelligent. Then she took her private cipher notebook from under the loose floorboard she had identified in the first week and wrote in the notebook, "Standard curriculum omits self-referential operations. All missing operations are the ones that allow inscriptions to respond to external conditions and to their own state. This is systemic. This is a choice." She puts the notebook back, puts the floorboard back, gets into bed, and does not sleep for a long time. Vane calls her to study on the 20th day. She has been expecting this. Not because of any specific signal. He has said nothing to her directly since her arrival, and she has not sought him out. And the household operates around this mutual non-engagement as though it is an established weather pattern that everyone has learned to route around. She has been expecting it because 20 days is long enough for a man who has been in political life for 20 years to form an initial assessment of a change in his household's behavior. And a man who has formed an initial assessment and not yet acted on it is a man who is deciding how to act, and a man deciding how to act will call for a meeting. The study is on the second floor of the West Wing, which is the wing she has visited least. The West Wing is where the household's administrative work happens, where the correspondence office is, where the estate's historical records are kept in a room she has not yet been given access to. The study's door is heavy dark wood with brass fittings that are polished to a matte sheen, which is the finish of someone who polishes for use rather than display. She knocks. He says, "Come in." The study is organized the way she expected from everything she has assembled about Vane. Precise, functional, the arrangement of a person who treats their workspace as a tool rather than a reflection. 3 walls of shelves, the books organized by subject rather than size or color. The desk is large and clear except for the current working correspondence, which is stacked on the left side in what she can tell is a specific order, priority, or time sensitivity, or both. 1 chair behind the desk. 2 chairs in front of it. The chairs in front of the desk are not exactly parallel, which is a small thing that might mean nothing or might mean that he adjusts them based on whether a meeting is collaborative or adversarial. She sits in the right-hand chair, which is the one slightly further from the center. He is at the desk when she enters, finishing a notation on something she cannot read from this angle. He sets the pen down when she sits. He does not look at her immediately, which is the specific pause of someone managing their own response to something before they speak, and she notes this and notes her own response to noting it, which is, this is a man who is careful about the impression he makes and has spent enough time managing impressions to have internalized the care. He says, "Thank you for coming." She says, "Of course." He folds his hands on the desk. They are large hands for someone of his build, and the knuckles on the right hand are slightly irregular in a way that suggests an old injury that healed less than perfectly. She files this without knowing why. It is not information she can immediately use. It is just the kind of thing she notices when she is paying attention to someone, and she is paying very close attention to Vane. He says, "The Academy enrollment papers have been submitted. I wanted you to be aware." She says, "Thank you. I've been preparing for the examination." He says, "I know. Mavet mentioned it." A pause. She holds the pause because what he does with it will tell her more than what she fills it with. He says, "Your examination preparation seems to be going well." She says, "I hope so." He says, "Mavet said you've been working through the foundational theory texts rather than the sequence material." She says, "I find I understand the techniques better when I understand why they work. It's probably an odd approach." He says, "It's your mother's approach." She does not move. She lets the words settle into the room without reacting to them, because reacting immediately to something significant is exactly the wrong move when you don't know yet what the person saying the significant thing is testing for. She says, after a beat that she controls, is it? He looks at her directly for the first time in the conversation. The controlled economy of his face is still there. He is not going to give her anything she has not earned, but there is something behind it that was not there a moment ago. She cannot name it precisely. The closest she can get is, this is what recalculation looks like. He says, where did you hear about your mother's inscription work? She says, you mentioned her once when I was small. I remembered. This is not true. She did not hear about it from him. She heard about it from the library texts and from the household staff and from the shape of the absences in the East Wing. But she is not ready to explain where she actually heard it, and she needs to close the distance between them before she can be honest with him about what she has found. And the only way to close the distance is carefully and in stages, and the first stage is offer him something true in a form that sounds like something true. He says, she was very gifted. The phrase is controlled in the way of a phrase someone has used enough times that it has become a container for something larger and more complicated than the words themselves hold. She watches him say it and thinks, he loved her and has been keeping the love in a container with a lid on it for 5 years. She says, I believe it. He looks at her a moment longer. Then he picks up his pen, which is the signal that the meeting is ending, and she rises from the chair with the appropriate timing. She is almost at the door when he says, Nova. She turns. He says, if you have questions about her work. I cannot pause. There may be some things in the East Wing that would be useful to you. When you're ready. She says, thank you, and she means it in a way that is not strategic, and she notes that this is unusual, and she goes back out through the heavy door and down the West Wing corridor and does not stop moving until she is in the library with the door closed behind her. She stands in the center of the library for a moment. He said, your mother's approach. He said it because she asked about the foundational texts and he recognized something in the question that reminded him of someone. He said, when you're ready. There is something in the East Wing that he has been keeping. She goes to the shelf, takes down the pre-academy foundational text, and sits in the chair by the window. She reads. But the text is not what she is actually processing. She is processing. He looked at her for those 3 seconds and something shifted in his expression. It was a small shift. It was the shift of someone who was bracing for one thing and did not receive it. She does not know what he was bracing for. She knows it did not arrive. She turns the page. Outside, the hills have gone to evening gold, and the birds are doing whatever birds do at this hour that she can hear through the closed window as a faint, complex murmur. She sits in the chair with the book in her hands and the 20-day assessment in her head and thinks about a man who kept something in the East Wing for 5 years, waiting, and she thinks about what he might have been waiting for. She stays in the library until dinner. She eats. She goes to bed. She wakes at the 3rd hour of the morning with a thought, clear and complete. There is something specific in the East Wing study, and it is not furniture. She has known this for days from the household's ambient references, the locked room, the dust around the door frame that Ren mentioned, but she has not put it together with what she knows about Lady Kira Vane's inscription work until this moment. She lies in the dark and puts it together now. Lady Kira Vane was an inscription theorist. Lady Kira Vane died 5 years ago in a way that the household has not described as anything other than an accident, but which stopped a research project that appears, from what Nova has assembled in 20 days, to have been in an advanced state. The study in the East Wing has been locked since Lady Kira's death. Reborn Vane said, when you're ready. She thinks, the proof is in the East Wing study. She does not know yet what the proof proves. She knows it exists because everything she has found points toward a woman who was working toward something specific and was working with the foundational notation system that the approved curriculum has removed, and that combination means she was working on something the people who removed those operations would not have wanted her to complete. She lies in the dark for a long time. Then she gets up, goes to the desk, takes out her cipher notebook from under the loose floorboard, and writes this down. Not because she will forget it. Because writing it makes it real in a different way than thinking it does, and she needs it to be real. She wrote in the notebook, Kira Vane. East Wing study. Research, incomplete or completed, related to the foundational notation system. Proof of something the curriculum suppressed. Still locked. Reborn Vane has the key and will provide access when you are ready. When am I ready? No answer yet. She puts the notebook away and goes back to bed and lies in the dark until morning, thinking about the shape of things that are kept for someone to find. Mavet arrives on the 23rd morning with a book under his arm and a particular quality of purpose. She reads this immediately. He has been thinking about something since their last session, and he has decided to address it, and the book is his vehicle for the address. She has her own reading material on the table, the pre-academy foundational text, which she has stopped trying to hide since the meeting in Rian's study, because hiding it would be more suspicious than not hiding it at this stage of the game. Mavet sees it when he comes in. His eyes pass over it and come back to her, and that brief pass and return is a small thing, but she has gotten very good in 23 days at reading small things. He says, "I have something for you." He sets the book on the lesson table. She leans forward to look at it. It is an inscription theory text, and it is beautiful. The binding is new, the kind of new that costs more than the content usually warrants, which means it was produced specifically for people who will be impressed by the quality of the binding. The title, The Architecture of Modern Inscription, a complete theoretical framework, compiled by the Academy of Valheim under the auspices of the Grand Archivist's Office. She picks it up and opens it. The paper is the good kind. The print is clear. The illustrations of notation sequences are precise and elegantly done. She reads the first 3 pages of the introduction while Mavet watches with the patience of a man who has placed something and is waiting to see how it lands. The introduction is a history of inscription notation development, written in the warm, authoritative tone of a subject that has been fully resolved and is now simply being transmitted. It describes the modern notation system as the culmination of centuries of refinement, the result of the Academy's founding scholars synthesizing all available inscription traditions into a coherent framework. It does not mention the 12 foundational operations. It does not mention the cipher notation school. It describes the early inscription traditions as valuable in their time, but limited by their historical context. It uses the word superseded 4 times in 3 pages. She notes each instance of superseded. She closes the book. She says, "This is wonderful. Thank you, instructor." "Where is this from?" He says, "A personal gift from the Grand Archivist himself. He mentioned your renewed interest in inscription theory and asked me to pass this along." She says, "How thoughtful of him." She means this precisely and not at all. Vahan Crane, her godfather, who appears in the correspondence as a warm and generous presence, has sent her a book through her tutor. The book is a beautifully produced version of the approved framework presented as the complete theoretical foundation of inscription magic. He has sent her this specific book at the specific moment that she began asking questions about the foundational theory texts. She sets the book to her left on the table, adjacent to the pre-academy foundational text, and watches Mavet process the adjacency. He processes it with smooth professionalism, nothing changes in his expression or his posture, and opens his satchel and begins removing the lesson materials. He says, "I thought we might try something slightly different today. Rather than the Thornfield sequence, I'd like to look at a few of the chapters in the Archivist's volume, compare the theoretical basis to what we've been doing in practice. It can help to see the framework laid out formally." She says, "Of course. This is a sophisticated move." The book is structured to feel like the complete picture, like reading it is getting access to the real underlying theory, not the technique-focused curriculum. If she had not already read the pre-academy foundational text, she would probably feel that she was receiving something valuable here. The book's chapters on notation theory are genuinely good. They are also structured to arrive at the same conclusions through a more elaborate route. The modern notation system, as defined by the approved curriculum, is the optimal framework. The 5 missing operations do not appear in the index. She checks while he is setting up the lesson. They are not there. She opens the book to the chapter he indicates and reads alongside him, and she is very careful in this session to be exactly the student the lesson expects her to be, engaged, progressing, asking the questions that the material is designed to prompt. She asks nothing about the notation grammar she has been developing independently. She asks nothing about what superseded means specifically, or why the historical tradition the book describes as limited managed to produce the pre-academy foundational text she has been working from for 2 weeks. She produces, at the end of the session, a clean demonstration of a rank 1 compound inscription using only the approved notation. It is correct and complete, and Mavet praises it with specific, genuine enthusiasm, which tells her that she hit the target accurately, the target being, look like someone who is learning what he is teaching her. She says, the framework in the archivist's volume really does make the notation clearer. He says, it's the most comprehensive presentation I know of. The Grand Archivist is very proud of it. She says, I can see why. He leaves at the end of the second hour. She listens to his footsteps down the corridor and then sits in the quiet morning room for a moment with the two books side by side on the table. The new one, beautiful, complete within its own terms. The old one, 60 years old, covering the same material from a foundation that produces a different kind of understanding. She thinks, someone sent her the new book. Someone identified that she was asking questions that pointed toward the old one. She thinks, the response time on that is interesting. Mavet reports to Crane, who responds within days with a targeted counter-resource. That is the structure of a monitored system, not random, not precautionary, but specifically reactive to a specific behavior. She puts both books in her bag and carries them to the library. She spends the afternoon mapping the counter-resource. The archivist's volume is comprehensive within its defined scope, which means it is a complete picture of a deliberately bounded space. She reads it the way she used to read systems documentation when she was assessing a target, looking for the seams, the places where the defined scope meets its own edges, the things it calls conclusions that are actually closures. She finds 11 points where the text closes off a line of inquiry with a phrase like, further development of this approach proved unproductive, or, this theoretical direction was not pursued, without citing evidence for either claim. 11 points. She writes them in her cipher notation in the private notebook. She marks each one with a specific foundational operation it would require to pursue if pursued. 7 of the 11 map to the 5 missing operations. She sits back in the library chair and looks at the ceiling. She thinks, this is a map. Someone has very carefully mapped the space of inquiry that they do not want anyone to occupy, and labeled it unproductive and superseded and limited, and presented this map as the complete picture of the territory. She thinks, I have been working from the territory itself for 2 weeks. The territory is larger than the map. She wrote in the notebook, the archivist's book is not the framework. It is the boundary. She thinks about who designed this boundary and why. She thinks about the book's title, compiled under the auspices of the Grand Archivist's office. She thinks about Beton Crane, her godfather, warm and brilliant and specifically helpful at the moment she began looking in the wrong direction, which is to say the right direction. She does not have enough information yet. She has enough to know that she is operating inside a constrained information environment that is actively maintained, and that the maintenance is responsive, and that someone is watching carefully enough to send a counter-resource within days of a behavioral signal. She added a line to the notebook, Crane monitors Mavet's reports. Response time, 3 days. This is operational, not casual. She closes the notebook, puts it back under the floorboard in her room, and goes to dinner. At dinner, she thinks about the archivist's book's beautiful binding and the warmth Mavet had when he handed it to her, the genuine quality of his pleasure at her engagement with the material. She thinks, he does not know what he is doing. He is running a curriculum someone else designed, and he believes it is good instruction because it is good instruction within its own terms, and the terms were designed by someone who knew exactly what they were excluding. She is almost certain of this. She finishes her dinner. She thinks, almost certain is not the same as certain, and the distance between the two matters when you are deciding how to act. She will need more time. She has 3.5 months. She writes the first inscription from first principles on the 20th night. Not from the textbook. Not from Mavet's prepared curriculum. Not from the archivist's volume. From her own derivation, the notation system as she understands its underlying logic, built up from the foundational text and 2 weeks of analysis in the cipher notebook. Using all 12 foundational operations because she has decided to work from the complete system and understand the reduced one as a special case of it. She does this late, after the household has been quiet for an hour. She is at the desk in her room with the lamp turned low. Practice paper in front of her, the cipher notebook open to her analysis beside it. She has been thinking about this inscription for 3 days, specifically, what the simplest possible test would be. She wants to know if the full foundational notation produces different behavior from the approved curriculum's simplified version, and she wants evidence she can compare side by side. A light inscription. Rank 1, the most basic possible. She will write it in the full notation, and she will watch what it does, and she will compare it against the behavior described in the approved curriculum text. She picks up the pen. The cipher ink has been doing something interesting for the last week. It has begun to settle into a color. When she first arrived in this body and first produced mana, something she discovered by accident on the 9th day, pressing her fingers against a practice tablet and feeling the specific resistance of mana meeting a receptive surface. The ink was the colorless gray-white of undifferentiated mana. Over the following 2 weeks, it has been gradually clarifying. It is not there yet fully, but there is a tendency in it now, a cast toward the deep end of the visible spectrum. It will be dark when it settles. She does not know yet how dark. She writes the inscription. The notation is careful. She is working slowly, because this is the first time she has written the complete system, and she wants each symbol to be placed correctly. The foundational text notation grammar is more demanding than the approved curriculums. The symbols are more precisely specified. The spacing between them matters in a way that the simplified version's spacing does not. Because the simplified version's operations are linear and the full versions are relational, and relational notation requires position to carry meaning. She finishes the inscription. She looks at it on the page. She thinks, this is either going to work or it is going to do nothing, and either way I will learn something. She activates it. The light appears. It is exactly like the standard light inscription's output, the same quality of illumination, the same radius, the same warm white character of mana in its light form. She watches it for 30 seconds without moving, waiting to see if there is any difference at all. There it is. She has the lamp turned low, and as the seconds pass, the inscription's light increases fractionally, adjusting, compensating for the low ambient level, trying to maintain a consistent total illumination in the space. She watches this happen. She reaches forward and turns the lamp wick up. The inscription dims fractionally. She turns it down. It brightens. It is responding to its environment. It is responsive to a condition its writer did not specify directly. She sits back in the chair. She had not programmed this behavior. She built a logically complete system, the full foundational notation, including the operations that allow for exception handling and environmental response. And this behavior emerged from the logic, because the logic was complete enough to handle cases she did not anticipate. The inscription is doing what a logically complete system does when given a real environment. It is filling in the gaps its writer left. The standard light inscription in the approved curriculum cannot do this. She knows this because she looked it up in the curriculum text the day before. Standard light inscription, rank 1, output is fixed at activation value. No environmental response. No self-adjustment. Because the approved curriculum's notation is missing the operations that would allow a mage to build that kind of conditionality into a rank 1 inscription, and so the technique cannot include it. And so every mage in Villainess who has learned to write light inscriptions from the approved curriculum produces the same limited output and considers that to be what a light inscription does. They have been learning to write fixed programs when the language can write responsive ones. She dismisses the inscription with a touch. The light goes out. The room goes to the low warmth of the turned-down lamp. She sits in the dim light for a long time. She thinks about what she knows about systems with artificially constrained outputs. She has broken into enough of them. The constraint is never the system's native limitation. It is always a choice, and the choice is always made by someone who prefers the constrained version for reasons that are not about the system's capability. She picks up the pen and opens the cipher notebook. She writes, foundational notation produces self-referential behavior at rank 1. Standard curriculum produces fixed behavior. The difference is not difficulty. The notation I used is not harder than the approved version. It is different. The constraint is not capability. It is a choice about what the standard framework will allow mages to build. She stops and reads what she has written. Then she writes, this is a bug. Not in the magic. The magic works as designed. The bug is in the approved framework. Someone wrote a programming language and then taught everyone to use it without the operations that make it powerful. She thinks about that for a moment. Then she writes, why? She does not have the answer yet. She has the observation. She has the shape of the question. She is the beginning of a picture of something that she will not fully understand for months, and she knows she will not fully understand it for months, and she makes a note of that too. This is the start of something. Don't act on partial information. Collect. Map. Wait. She closes the notebook. She puts it back under the floorboard. She goes to the window and looks out at the estate at night, the courtyard lit by a single lamp at the east gate, the hills beyond completely dark, the sky above the hills heavy with stars in the specific profusion that only exists at this distance from a city. She has been in this body for 28 days. She has a map of the household social structure, a map of the old Nova's active schemes, most of which she has now disrupted or neutralized, a private cipher notation system derived from the foundational inscription logic, 2 weeks of analysis notes, and an inscription result that tells her something important about the system she is inside of. She has not yet met her father properly. She has not yet had a real conversation with her brother. She has not yet been to the East Wing study. She has 3.5 months. She stands at the window and thinks about the foundational text's 11 chapters on the notation grammar and what it would take to derive the complete system, not just understand it theoretically, but be able to write from it fluently. The way she needs to be able to write from it if she is going to be of any use when she actually needs to be. She will need to practice. Alone at night, from first principles, building toward a competence that looks like something else in any witnessed context. She has done this before. She has spent her entire career doing something carefully in private and performing something slightly different in public, and the specific skill of maintaining the gap between what you are and what you appear to be is a skill she has in abundance. The difference is that before, the gap was the con. Now, she is not sure what the gap is. She is not sure if she is performing a lesser ability to protect a greater one or performing a person who does not exist to protect herself from becoming the person she was. She is not sure these are different things. She turns from the window. She gets into bed. She lies in the dark and thinks about the self-adjusting light. The way it compensated for the low lamp without being told to. The way it filled in what she did not specify because the system was complete enough to generate it. She thinks, that is what a complete system does. It handles the cases you didn't plan for. She thinks, I have been running on an incomplete system for 27 years. She does not say, I am going to do something about this. She does not make resolutions in the dark. She has learned, over 27 years, that resolutions made in the dark do not survive morning. She just lies there and thinks about the light and falls asleep slowly and does not dream. She goes to the inscription garden after midnight for the first time on the 31st night. The reason is practical. She needs a practice surface large enough for a compound inscription, and the stone tablets in the garden are the only surfaces available to her that will retain cipher ink in testable form without requiring her to mark up any of the furniture in her room. She has been writing on practice paper, which is useful for notation work, but does not give her the feedback of cipher ink meeting a resonant surface, the specific quality of the connection, whether the inscription is activating correctly or partially, whether the conditional logic is threading the way she intends. She ties her hair back and takes a lamp turned low and goes out to the garden at midnight. The garden at this hour is completely still in the particular way of enclosed spaces at night, the fountain basin dark, the stone tablets pale in the lamplight, the east wing wall behind them absorbing the light at the edges. She sets the lamp on the wall that borders the garden and goes to the third tablet from the left, which is the one she noticed during Theo's practice session. It is the largest, with the smoothest face, the best surface for careful work. She begins. She writes slowly. The foundational notation, derived from the primary text, using the full 12 operations. A simple structural inscription reinforcement, not light, because reinforcement gives her tactile feedback when she runs her hand over the surface after activation. And tactile feedback is useful when you are learning to calibrate the gap between what the notation specifies and what the material does with it. She works for approximately an hour. She writes the inscription 3 times, dismissing it after each attempt and examining what failed. The second instruction spacing was slightly off the first time. The conditional bridge between the 4th and 5th operations was too tight the second time. The third attempt she gets right, and the stone under her palm when she tests it has the specific density of properly inscribed reinforcement, a solidity that the uninscribed tablets beside it do not have. She dismisses the third attempt and stands up from the crouch she has been working in. She becomes aware at this point that she is not alone in the garden. She had not heard him arrive. She does not know how long he has been there. He is at the far end of the garden, the first tablet from the left, which is the smallest, and he is sitting cross-legged on the ground beside the tablet with a lamp of his own, also turned low. She can see the cipher ink on the tablet's surface from here, gray-white, fresh, in the notation she recognizes as the sequence she showed him. He has been practicing the pause notation. He is looking at her. She is looking at him. They have been working in the same small garden for an unknown amount of time, both of them in the dark with lamps turned low, and neither of them had known the other was there. She thinks, this is a small, accidental piece of information about both of them. She does not say anything immediately. She looks at the inscription he has written on the tablet. From here, she can see it is a compound sequence, 2 instructions, and the pause notation between them is where she wrote it. She cannot see from this angle whether the sequence is working, but the cipher ink looks stable, which is better than the flickering she observed during his afternoon practice. She says, "Did it work?" He does not answer immediately. The pause is shorter than the ones he gave her before, 3 seconds instead of 4, which might be nothing, or might be a small adjustment. He says, "Third time." She says, "What did you change between the first and third?" He is quiet again. She watches him decide whether to answer this. He says, "The pause notation. You wrote it one way. I tried it the other way first." He pauses. "The other way doesn't work." She says, "No, it doesn't. The operation is directional. It has to face the first instruction, not the second. The foundational text explains why." She says this and then thinks, he does not have the foundational text. She adds, "I can write it down if you want the reasoning." He says nothing for a moment. Then he says, "Why are you using cipher notation?" She looks at him across the dark garden. She thinks about what she can tell him and what she cannot tell him yet, and what she owes him by way of truth at this stage of knowing each other. She thinks, he is 14. He found a sequence in the garden from an older sister who does not, as far as he knows, have a reason to be helpful, and he practiced it in secret and got it right on the third attempt, and he is asking her, in the dark, in the garden. The question that is actually several questions. Why do you know this? Why did you give it to me? What is happening that I don't understand? She says, "How do you know what cipher notation is?" His chin comes up slightly. She has answered his question with a question, which is either deflection or the honest equivalent. "I will answer yours if you answer mine," and she watches him read it as one or the other. He says, "Mother used it." She is very still. He does not look at her when he says it. He is looking at the inscription on his tablet, which she notices is still active. It is still producing its compound effect, which means he is maintaining it with residual mana while he talks. This is not easy for someone at his level. She is not sure he knows he is doing it. She says, "Your mother." He says, "Our mother." A small emphasis on the first word that carries something she cannot fully decode, not anger, or not only anger. Something more like, "I am saying this, and you are going to acknowledge it as true." She says yes. And then, because she has decided to be honest in the ways that matter even when she is not in a position to explain everything, I found her notation in some of the foundational texts in the library. I recognized it as the same system. She pauses. "How long have you known about her inscription work?" He says, 2 years. He says it with the flat quality of a fact he has been carrying alone for 2 years and is not sure he is ready to share. She says, "Where did you find it?" He is quiet for a long moment. Then he says, "She left things in the garden. Under the third planter." He gestures toward the fountain basin. "There's a box. I found it the summer after she died. I look at it sometimes. I don't know what most of it means." She is looking at the fountain basin. She is looking at the third stone planter that is visible from here in the lamplight. It is a heavy planter, decorative, set against the east wing wall. She has walked past it multiple times in 3 weeks. She says, "I'd like to see it. If you're willing." He does not answer immediately. The pause this time is different from all the previous pauses. It is not the pause of someone deciding whether to engage. It is the pause of someone deciding whether something that matters to them can survive being shared. He says, "Why?" She says, "Because if it's what I think it is, it might be the most important thing in this house. And I think you've been carrying it alone for 2 years and you shouldn't have to." He looks at her across the garden. The lamp at his end casts the light upward, which gives his face the particular quality of lamplight, the features slightly exaggerated, the shadows sharper than they would be in daylight. He is 14 and carrying something that is too heavy for him and has been carrying it with the specific determination of someone who decided at some point that if he put it down it would stop existing. He does not say yes. He does not say anything. But his lamp is still on and the inscription on his tablet is still active, and he does not get up and leave. She says, "Not tonight. When you're ready." He says, "Okay." She picks up her lamp from the wall. She goes back toward the manor entrance. At the archway she turns once, briefly, and he is still there, cross-legged on the ground beside the tablet, the inscription still active, watching the compound effect do what it is supposed to do now that the pause notation is correct. She goes inside. She goes to her room and puts the lamp on the desk and sits down and does not write anything in the cipher notebook tonight. She sits in the lamplight and thinks about the box under the third planter and what it contains and the 2-year-old boy who found it and decided it was his to keep until he understood it. She thinks she has a brother who knows things she does not know, and she has given him something he could use, and he has given her something in return, and neither of them has acknowledged that an exchange took place. She thinks this is the slowest possible way to build anything. She thinks it is probably the right way. She blows out the lamp. In the dark, the garden is very quiet. Somewhere below, she can faintly feel, not hear, feel, the specific quality of inscription mana still active on the stone tablet, sustaining itself in the dark, doing what it was built to do. She goes to sleep.